Gary, we'll move on to your first question. So as an entrepreneur who has successfully brought several medical devices through the FDA process, can you give us a brief overview of the process, kind of that you went through, touch on your experiences, and just kind of share what that was like?
Sure, yeah, for sure. And hopefully it's some helpful nuggets here. But most of my experience has been in medical device and or diagnostics in the 30 years that I've been in the business, mostly with Class 2 devices and Class 3 devices. And as Carla just explained, the level of risk to the patient outcome with Class 2 and Class 3 is slightly different. Class 3 being a traumatic outcome as a result of a failure of that product, Class 2 being less so. VentureMed is a commercial stage medical device company, recently closing a Series B round, and we're in an expansion mode, ramping up our sales and marketing enterprise at this time. Our platform technology is called Flex, and Flex is a peripheral catheter for the treatment of atherosclerotic disease in the femoral arteries, the popliteal arteries, the arteries below the knee, AV access, and people that are undergoing dialysis that have AV fistula or AV grafts. We manage those disease areas as well. And the reason I share that with you is the process of defining your regulatory strategy and of going through the motion starts on day one with a medical device company. The very first time, I'm very fortunate to work with John Piggott, vascular surgeon from the Job Center, is the founder of VentureMed. He's been very interactive in the development of the product and the commercialization of the platform going forward. But from the first day, John and I sat down and just started to describe where we were going to go with the product. We incorporated what our FDA strategy was going to be. And the reason I say that's so important because it will drive your decisions around the claims you make for your product. What are you going to tell the FDA? What are you going to tell the world my product does? And as soon as you start to decide that, you start to think about what am I going to have to do to back that up? Because the FDA process is going to pull you through proving that your claims, whether they're therapeutic or diagnostic claims, are substantiated by the testing that you do and the rigor that you take your product line through. And so that's very much the fiber of the company right from day one. It's not a line item somewhere down in your Gantt chart as you put a project plan together. While it is definable there, and there's a set of time that you put to that, and there's money that you set aside to go through these tasks, it really does drive your decisions. It also drives your decisions around packaging, around labeling, again, the instructions for use that you're going to put in your product, and that's why I think it's really, really important for you to bring that discussion up in the very first meeting you have when you're thinking about starting a medical device company. I'll say that there's 5 easy steps to getting a product through the FDA, and there's a ton of stuff behind this, and Carla will get a kick out of this. So the first one is confirm that you have a medical device. I mean, you don't always have a medical device. You don't necessarily need to take some technologies through the FDA. Confirm that you have a medical device and then figure out what classification it falls under. You can go to the FDA's website and try and figure that out, or you can call 1-800-NAMSA and get someone on the phone from NAMSA that has been doing this for a long time that can help you out, or you can contact someone like me that's been in the industry and understands the divisions between 2, 3, and Class 1. But it's really important to understand that on the front end. And Carla mentioned as well, find a predicate device. And the predicate device is a strategic decision as well. If you are going to go through a Class 2 clarification, you want to, and you have limited capital, right, when you're in a startup company, and your goal is how do I reduce the risk in getting my product to market in a timely and cost-effective manner, you want to look through all the predicates that you're going to be competing against. And you can get their files that they submitted to the FDA. You look at what their claims were in their files, what did the FDA approve them on, and you also take a look at, did they do a large clinical trial? If they did a 500-patient clinical trial and you don't have the budget to do that, look for another predicate that's close to what you're thinking about with your device, and you might want to build your strategy around that. VentureMed elected to choose a predicate device that did not have a huge clinical on the front end, and as a result, when we took it to the FDA and sat down with them and we showed them how we compared to the performance of that device, they really weren't in a position to come back to us and say, yeah, but they did 200 people, you got to go out and do 250 people. Now, we had done a first-in-man trial, we had plenty of human clinical data, but that that allowed us to create a plan around the timeline and the budget that we needed to support this. And one of the best ways to do that, again, is to get a matrix in place and look at what your competition has done. And then you have to identify all the applicable standards to your product, the guidance documents, and I'll just say one quick thing. In the catheter space, in the peripheral catheter space, there are some real nuances to the performance the FDA expects to see from that. One of them is that you have to be able to wrap your catheter around a half an inch tube and show when that tube's going to kink. Now, you're never going to see that anatomy in a person. One of the things that we could have gone, if we didn't understand what the guidance document said, could have shown up at the FDA and not had that information, in which case we'd be back to the drawing board. The easiest part of the 5-step is to prepare and submit a 510K application. And there's just volumes of information to go behind that. I say that tongue in cheek, but that really is a process where you're bringing in all of your engineering information, you're bringing all your test information, your clinical data, et cetera, and you're putting it in a electronic folder for the FDA to review. And then finally, you have to prepare for clearance and then registering your product. And I say prepare for clearance because in VentureMed's case, we had actually received CE mark first, and we had decided to invest our energy and our funds in starting to build out the European market, thinking that our timeline with the FDA was going to be a longer timeline than it actually was. It was about 120 days. And we were planning on 180 days, so it came to us about 60 days earlier than we had planned. And boom, all of a sudden we have 510K clearance, and we weren't really ready to launch in the US. So it was a matter of readjusting our operating plan at that time, getting our salespeople back over from Europe and focused on working right here in our backyard. So those are the 5 easy steps.
Easy. You know what though, I hear is a theme in every single panel that we do is engage the experts early, because it's going to save you time in the back end. So I'm hearing that here too, most certainly. I'm guessing most of us would not be able to do this on our own, right? We would need to engage a firm or an expert. Are there certain firms that do this as part of what they do? I mean, this is something NAMSA, I know we are actually peeking into a question of later, but I think it fits right now. So is this something that NAMSA does?
Yeah, we do. So we have regulatory consultation services, and we work with all types of companies, from small startup companies, including one-man bands, like literally one person with an idea, all the way to large corporations who need to supplement their regulatory staff themselves. So one thing we would do first is what we call a regulatory assessment, and we say, okay, this is your idea, this is your technology. This is your patient population and what you intend for it to do. How can you expect to be regulated? And what are the FDA requirements associated with that? So FDA actually has some guidance documents and things like that, or standards that they would expect you to follow, and we can help identify those. We can also help in strategy, so helping companies choose a pathway. And Gary has a platform technology. With some platform technologies and indication, you may have one indication which takes you down a class 2 route, you may have another indication that takes you down a class 3 route, and there's a multiple year, potentially multi-million-dollar difference between those 2 pathways, right? So sometimes folks like to start with the easier one first and get their bearings and then proceed, so we help with those kind of decisions.
Very good, thank you.